Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 30. We're going to start things off today with a newcomer to the Strand. This is Menthel. He is a more recent supporter, and this is one of the first couple of games he sent me. And I've decided to pick this one out because it's not a tank I get sent a lot of replays of, despite it being arguably one of the most important tanks of World War II. He's got the 57mm on this, so he's got a good rate of fire, but he doesn't do a lot of damage to go with it. And to get the benefit of that full rate of fire, you really have to be sat still and just pumping out the shots over and over again. And it's exactly the same with some of the same caliber British guns. It's a 57mm gun, and the British 6-pounders are all 57mm guns as well. So things like the Churchills and the 82, you really have to be sat still. But I think those have better handling on the move because they are generally, most of them, slower machines. Although if you were comparing this to, say, the Crusader, I'm not quite sure what the exact comparison would be. But anyway, now this is going to be Menthel's Ace Tanker game, and we're already over a minute in, and he's only just done his first bit of damage. And there we go, he actually manages to get a ram kill for the first kill. So that's not bad. That's quite historically appropriate for a T-34, all things considered. This entire match is going to last about 4.5 minutes. This is going to be a very quick game, and it is rather OP matchmaking. There are 3 tier 5s per team. And for this kind of setup, this is fairly glorious for most tier 5s, but something like a T-34, which has got that combination of mobility and firepower, it is especially good. And because a lot of these the low tiers, the tier 3s especially, are not going to have terribly good guns, his armor is actually going to be somewhat effective. So they've just lost a bunch of tanks at the same time. And I was watching at this point, knowing how short this battle was, and thinking, well, this is not, this is, it's not like they're not losing tanks as well. The enemy team is getting knocked out, but their own team is also getting knocked out. So, yeah, and then, okay, they've lost a couple more. So I was starting to think at this point, all right, maybe, okay, this is, even though they've lost a few, they are going to just keep the upper hand all the way along. But I don't know, it's one of these games where it's just, it all happens so quickly. And he's already done 1,000 damage, and this is just like the power of this gun. If you can sit and pelt away at people, then you absolutely can wreck them. So that DW2 probably has a 5cm gun, which isn't particularly powerful, and Menthel's actually going to get some bounces here. So he knows he really doesn't have to be worried by this guy. He can outpace him with a rate of fire, and he actually had sufficient armor to get a bounce there. So he's only taken a little bit of damage. It's having to stop to aim, and it really is the nature of this gun. You have to stop to aim. I think I covered that already, but it's also not got terribly good gun depression, and he could have actually done more damage here, but for some reason, yeah, I don't know, he takes a little bit too long to get his gun on that VK and only gets 1 hit in. It's still a little bit more damage, but he could have gotten more. Still, all things considered, 1400 is not bad, considering we're only just approaching the 4-minute mark, and there's only 3 enemy tanks left at this stage. Funnily enough, the other 2 tier 5s didn't seem to do that well. Now, the KV-1 did get a pair of kills, but the T-14, for which this is about as good as it gets, seemed to die without accomplishing much of anything in particular. So there's the Skoda, and this pair of enemy tank destroyers are actually somewhat dangerous, except the Marder's firing HE. And there's another ram kill. Sadly, there are no achievements for that, but well, actually, having said that, there's you can get kamikaze, but in this case, it doesn't go the other way. You don't get any awards for killing lower tiers with rams. So there we are. He gets that final kill, gets a top gun. He also had a high caliber, ace tanker, and his first mark of excellence with just over 1,800 damage done. It wasn't really, like, given the nature of the matchmaking, you'd have to fail pretty hard, and The KV-1, 500 damage, 2 kills, okay, but the T-14 only had 340 damage, so yeah. But the enemy team also failed fairly hard. In fact, their top tiers were not particularly good either. So Menthel really was the star of that show, and 4.5 minutes for an ace tanker, that's not bad going at all. Next, we're going to have, well, another ace tanker game, but this time of a very different nature. This is Island Man, and he's in the WZ-131. This is a game where he came very close to getting I think it was for the HTC, the Heavy Tank Concept, the Light Tank 15 mission, where you have to do a combination of 5,000 damage and assistance damage. And this is one I still haven't got myself. Now this is, I'm guessing he's actually done it since then. This is an older game. This is from 9.13. And it's going to be, result-wise, a decent game, but some of Island Man's decisions, I'm not sure I would have taken the same decisions. And it might just be he decided to go a bit ham and kind of got lucky, but in some ways also kind of didn't. So what he's done here is very aggressively come forwards. He's thinking of running away and then deciding, actually, no, I'm going to maybe try and stick it out, or maybe he's just worried that there are tank destroyers back there. In terms of backup, he's got an ELC who's just died and a T-20 who's going completely ham. And at this point, yeah, discretion wins out. He decides, okay, no, I'm going to get out of here, or at least I'm going to withdraw until the T-34 can catch up, because between the two of them, the Mod 1 and the Comet, the Mod 1's got the armor and the Comet's got the rate of fire. The T-20 doesn't really have either, so he doesn't last long at all. And rather than hang around and lose a whole bunch of health, he's going back to join up with his T-34. I thought at this stage he might even just be going all the way back down to the cap, but well, it looks like he's contemplating it, and then I think the T-34 pings, and no, he's already turning before the T-34 pings. Okay, so he was actually just linking up. He didn't want to try and hold off those two enemy tanks himself. So the T-34, squashy hull, but a big gun, and if he can stay hull down, he can actually be quite effective. Now, Island Man, again, is super aggressive and decides he's going to circle strafe the Comet. And he kind of gets away with it, but he kind of doesn't. He's taken a shot to the engine and had to use his repair kit, so okay, he's back to full mobility. The Comet is panicking a little, maybe. He's not actually turning his hull, he's just turning his turret. But he's still able to shoot Island Man, and although Island Man's going to get the kill, he's now down to 155 health. This is not so good. The rest of his team, meanwhile, isn't doing so well either. They all, like the enemy team really didn't have a big presence up on the northern half of the map. They seem to have packed into that corridor along F and G and are just totally overwhelming Island Man's team. And Island Man initially looks like he might go and try to get some shots from, where is it, E5, that kind of position. But then, yeah, we can see on the mini-map there's a bunch of traces going towards the cap. And I think this is a moment of second guessing here. He's sort of reversing his decision, and then the enemy start to cap and he thinks, no, okay, yes, I really do have to go back and do something about that. There is an Su-122-44 on the little peninsula, and the rest of his teammates are all trying to deal with that big knot of enemy tanks in the middle, and it's not going to go very well, unfortunately. Him and the SU, a little spoiler here, him and the SU are going to end up the last ones alive on their team. So the SU's spotting these guys, and this gives Island Man a perfect opportunity to take shots. They're also getting very close to capping, though. There's something else in the cap, and it has to be an IS-3A, because that's the only thing that hasn't been seen yet. Anyway, fire on the KB-13, who might burn out, and yep, there we go. Takes a blind shot at the T-34, who is already a reset. The T-44, no, the Su-122-44 Takes a big hit, and oh, there we go. Somebody just resets. I think it might have been the SU. So, 10 seconds. He's got to get this IS-3. Nice, there we go. So that's a Defender medal, even. A Defender medal. Yeah, Defender medal. One of those, for sure. So, now it's just a matter of can they hang on. They've also got one KV-4 teammate left alive, but he's been ganged up on multiple enemies, so yeah, he's not going to last. So the T-34's hull is absolutely no issue for this gun. It's got a very nice gun, this tank, and these hits are really racking up the damage. It's what, 250 average, so he's had some decent rolls, and you know, the fire was lucky as well, and all this has taken him to almost 4,000 damage, and there we go, just over 4,000 damage. What do you want to bet the rest of his team hasn't done anything near so much? I think his plan at this point was to try and track the IS-3A, and he slightly panics, doesn't manage it, and if he had, that would have been useful, because we know for a fact the IS-3A had just used his repair kit. So yeah, that's a bit of a missed opportunity, but that's the kind of mistake that it's rather natural to make under the circumstances. There's also a Tiger that's turned up on the cap who is coming for a shot at Island Man. He's not noticed yet. Oh, hello, and then that bounce happens. And with that hasty snapshot back, he actually tracks the guy, and then the SU also tracks him. Although I figure the SU wasn't actually trying for a track, he was trying to get the kill. So that's one less enemy. 4 versus 2, but the 4 are all heavy tanks. So this is going to be tricky. This is definitely going to be tricky, if it is at all possible. So where's that IS-3A gone? He's being cautious here. He's very low health. I'm sure he wishes he had a few more hit points at this stage. And oh, there's the IS-3A. He's been spotted, and the regular IS-3A is now going for the SU, who's just on a slither of health himself. So Island Man might get a chance at a couple of more shots here, but he's about to be left all alone. So yeah, he can't quite reload fast enough to get that guy. However, he can at least fire at this T-34 instead, and get spotted during the process, because there's another T-34 coming up. Yeah, the enemy team actually had a platoon of T-34s, and they did rather decently well for their team. So the IS-3A looking for an angle. There's another shot for Island Man there. Over 5,000 damage at this point, but he doesn't have a lot of room left to maneuver, and with the gun depression on the T-34, he does not have to go very far to get the killing blow. So that was unfortunately a defeat, but still it was an ace tanker with a Defender medal, high caliber, and tank sniper. And if that had been a victory, or in fact, I think even if he just survived, that would have been the mission done. That would have been him with a heavy tank concept in his garage. I can't remember offhand if it was a win or not, but either way, even in a defeat, he still had the best score on either team, 1,080 XP. And the top score on the enemy team was 1,018. So, yeah. And in all that, he only missed one shot, although not every shot penetrated. So that was a boatload of damage done, but sadly it was not enough. And I think even if he hadn't wasted all that health in the start and just been so gung-ho aggressive against, well, just taking up that very aggressive early position and then having to get away, and if he'd been maybe in a slightly more sensible position, maybe the T-20 would have, but still, it probably would have been the same outcome overall. Anyway, onwards and upwards, we're on to some warships now, and this is a familiar name. This is Yachty 70 in the Bismarck. And this is proving to be a very popular ship indeed, but I fully predicted it would, because it's got all of the nice qualities of the Tirpitz, bar the torpedoes, but it's got some extra qualities that the Tirpitz just doesn't have. It's got a ridiculous, potentially, secondary range. And you better believe that Yachty is in fact using a secondary build on this ship. I also think that camo might be a permanent camo, I'm not sure. It's very similar to the camo on the Prince Eugen, but that's because it's the camo that they used for that ill-fated final mission, that foray out into the Atlantic, when Hood met its end, and then ultimately Bismarck met its end as well. So he's top tier, it's a tier 8 game, no carriers, but there are 3 destroyers and 2 of them are on this flank, Fubuki and Matsuki. And a lot of this game, this particular replay, is going to be about Yachty playing with the destroyers. And we can already see there have been waves of torpedoes coming in this direction. And you might think, looking at his positioning right now, looking at the direction in which he's headed, that this is going to be a typical, you know, float around at medium to long range and try and get some lucky hits and just dodge torpedoes and thereby not really get control of the cap point. But you'd be wrong. It does start off looking like that though. So just circling back in, and he's actually turning inwards rather than turning around outwards, and he is still attracting a bit of fire, but for now his allies are going to be getting the brunt of it, and that's not actually ideal. Now there are times when you do have to keep your distance because there are torpedoes around, but with the more brawling style battleships in the game, and that really is the Germans and the Americans, you've got to sometimes get close. You've got to tank the damage so that your more fragile teammates have got a bit of space to work. It's basically the mouse principle. And if you are maybe completely unaware of what I might be talking about there, one of the main ways in which the mouse can be useful in a game of World of Tanks is that you're sitting there bouncing a lot of shells that aren't doing any damage to you, whilst your teammates can then pop out and do damage against the people that have just fired. And it's not quite the same in warships because it's just the nature of the game. People might choose to ignore you and shoot the things that are behind you, but if you are aggressively positioned, then sometimes it'll work. Talking of medium range lucky shots, by the way, double Citadel on that North Carolina, who's showing beautiful broadsides there, and he's paid a heavy price. So his teammates around him, Yachty's teammates, have scented blood, and this North Carolina is going down. Now he's frantically trying to repair, but I think is he burning at the same time? I'm not actually sure, but yeah, that's not going to take a lot to kill him. However, unfortunately, Yachty's just lost a turret and another one. Isn't that a wonderful game mechanic? Yes, that's probably one of the least popular things in warships, is that and detonations. And for battleships especially, losing turrets can be an immense frustration because it can be crippling. It can absolutely be crippling. Fortunately, in this case, it was just critical hits. It wasn't outright incapacitations, but even those are annoying. If it was just the case that you only ever had those criticals and there was no way for your main batteries to be completely knocked out, then that would be a bit less bad, but no, they can and will get knocked out sometimes. Anyway, the Matsuki makes a very close drop, but Yachty's not going particularly fast, and this Matsuki's drop is, he's kind of spread it to each side, and that means Yachty can just thread the needle quite easily. You can just dance between these two groups, although one of those torpedoes does get awfully close. But this Matsuki is paying the price for having gotten quite that close to make a drop. I mean, it's a big risk and it can pay off, but it can also not work out at all. So then the Fubuki decides he's going to have a go, but Yachty's positioning right now is such that, well, bow on, he can have a pretty good chance of dodging, and that spread there, I mean, that was not going to be a difficult one to dodge at all. So, okay, that's fine. That's 2 lots of torpedoes that he doesn't have to worry about, but the Matsuki will be loaded again fairly soon. And there's a cyclone, so that also might complicate matters. Now you can tell Yachty's got the secondary build because his secondary is opening up on that York, who is nearly 10 kilometers away, but he's also getting a couple of hits on the destroyers. The main reason why his guns aren't going nuts against those destroyers, though, is because you really have to have a broadside to whatever it is you want the secondaries to deal with. And he doesn't want to give his broadside to the destroyers. He wants to keep his bow towards them so he can just keep dodging these torpedoes. And that Fubuki, I mean, that was the Mutsuki's torps, so that Fubuki is looking to make a drop himself again soon, and Yachty's got to be aware of it. And this is half the thing when dealing with the destroyers in a battleship, is knowledge, it's awareness. It is knowing that they are there and then being able to do something to actually dodge them. Although in that case, he wasn't quite able to dodge all of them. He finally takes a hit in the nose. So, yeah, paying attention really helps, and having the minimap mod that tells you the names also really helps. It tells you what destroyers are nearby. You're not having to rely on asking teammates in the chat who might not even speak the same language, or are maybe just ignoring you because they are busy doing their own thing, or even just because they're jerks and they don't want to tell you. That was one of the things that bugged me for years and years about World Attacks, is you'd ask, you know, I can see there's a heavy tank over there, but what heavy tank is it, and what health are they on, and can you tell me? And occasionally you'd get useful answers, but having to rely on your random teammates to tell you stuff like that is completely unreliable. So, more torpedoes dodged. I think when I first watched this through, it was around about now that I was going, Yachty, use your heal! Use your heal, Yachty! Heal! Heal! Heal it, Yachty! But he does remember eventually. So with those torps safely dodged, he knows the guy's on reload for at least a little while longer, and that means he can safely just slow down and get the cap. And his team generally is doing fairly well at this point. The enemy team is half gone, they've only got one cap circle, and this Mutsuki is also about to go down. So they do have one destroyer left, but he's all the way over on the other flank, and that means Yachty is now free to go a bit more forward and be a bit more aggressive. I should also note, by the way, I mean the Bismarck, and he has used it, and there we go, he's using it again. Or has he used it already? The Hydro. He may have used it once and I wasn't paying attention. But anyway, German Hydro is quite useful. The German Hydro has the best range of all the hydroacoustic search that you get. So those Prince Eugen torpedoes were never really going to be a threat. However, what is a threat is that Bismarck, Yachty waits for all his turrets to come around before he opens up, but he takes a very nasty hit himself, and he's at least 45 seconds just over, or no, just under, from getting another heal. And he's not going to live that long, because the Eugen's now closed the distance and has opened up as well. But if you can just get one more salvo, it'd be pretty nice. Come on, almost loaded. No, sadly not. Okay, never mind. So, despite the huge number of secondary hits there, he only got one fire out of it, I think, and the Bismarck was able to extinguish that. So, he doesn't get a lot of damage with the secondaries in this game, but they were... they look fun, if nothing else. Sometimes they're not very useful, but they look fun. And he was able to do enough damage to the Bismarck that the Benson's torpedoes are now going to find their mark and be able to finish him off. There we go. So it just leaves the Eugen because a Hipper died on the other side, and that really is pretty much it for the enemy team. They're basically done for. Now, that Eugen is, I mean, he knows he's going down. He concentrates on the low health Cleveland, and he is going to get to kill him, but he's going to go down himself not too long afterwards. So they're actually going to win on kills rather than points, just because that Cleveland dies. So he dies, and there we are. 71k damage done. It's not hugely spectacular in terms of damage. It's just him going in there and dancing through all those torpedoes and being able to correctly predict and just being at the front, being aggressive. It did get him a rather nice score, despite him not getting that much damage and only having one cap assist. So there's a value to that. There's a value to being at the front, but knowing when to do it, that's the trick. Sometimes it's suicidal, sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes you'll just get it wrong as to which it is, and it'll all go pear-shaped and you'll die unnecessarily. But in this case, he didn't. I mean, he did sink in the end, but he was able to successfully battleship, is probably the best way I could put it. He was able to tank the damage and be aggressive, and I think if he hadn't been there, his remaining teammates probably just would have fallen back to their starting cap. And maybe things would have gone a bit differently, but we'll never know. So hopefully you've enjoyed this this selection of Patreon supporter replays, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.